Hi, this is Gary Goodwin, founder of The Stuck Creative, and welcome. This is a place for tips, tools, and techniques for creatives who want to become unstuck, who want to get their projects started and to get them done. To get unstuck and to stay unstuck, creatives need to know the facts of life, to honor those facts of life in that we know how to deal with them. We don't ignore them, we're not blindsided by them, but we know the facts of creative life. And today we look at excuses and excusing. It's not that excuses are just around us sometimes and they're gone and they're far off, not even to be considered. No, the fact of life is, whenever we make a plan, whenever we set a goal, excuses are on the perimeter, are on the boundary, just waiting for their opportunity to come in. And for the majority of our time, we walk around being very vulnerable. Our vulnerability happens when we do that inner checking, that usual sort of checking with ourselves. Are we going to work, or are we not going to work? Or are we going to continue to work, or are we going to stop? Those are points of vulnerability. At each opening, we're waiting around for an answer that is soft, an answer that is very subjective, an answer that is open to all sorts of things that are happening around us and inside us at the moment. Each question leaves us open because we have to open to answer the question, but each answer leaves us open. The more wavering, the more uncertainty, the less clarity, the less energy we have, the less ability to hold on to a decision, the more the excuses will form, the stronger they'll be, and the more they'll be waiting to jump in. We need to know when excuses are at their most powerful so that we can do something about them. The first one we've already started to address. That is when excuses are unexpected. It's a fact of life. Excuses are wherever plans are, wherever goals are. We know that now, so we're not going to be caught off guard if we keep this in mind whenever we're making a plan. Don't ignore excuses. Excuses are powerful when they're underestimated. We barely even look at them. When people make plans, they put all their attention on the planning portion, how things should roll out, what the steps are, what we need to bring to the steps, but excuses rarely enters the discussion. We are underestimating them if we don't include them with all the other important elements, because they are important, because they're so powerful. They can slow us down, they can stop us, they can disrupt us, they can confuse us. Why would we be ignoring something like that? If we were coming up with a plan that we were considering emergencies or deviations from the plan, we would list everything else. We'd probably still leave off the power of excuses. No more. Starting today, we're going to become more and more aware of excuses and how we excuse, and we're not going to be blindsided, and we're not going to underestimate these things again. Excuses can slip in because they're unrecognized or unrecognizable. We don't know our own excuses well enough to notice when they're just forming, or when they're halfway, or when they've done their job. Sometimes we just look so quickly, so superficially, we don't know we've even just made an excuse. We move on, or we call it something else. We need to slow down, take a look, and get to know our own excuses and excusing. We need to go beyond just being able to recognize an excuse. We need to spend time examining our excuses, not in overly micro detail, but enough to see when they happen, how they happen, what does it feel like, what are we thinking when it happens to us. Just enough detail so we can start to see that it's not just a one piece, but it's broken into parts. And with that knowledge, we can start to have choices. We can start to have freedom when we affect one of those parts to weaken an excuse, to avoid an excuse, or to make an excuse totally disappear. If we question our excuses, and not in a way of what's wrong with us, why can't we do this, why did I fail to do that, that's not questioning the excuse. Questioning an excuse is to recognize the excuse, to know its parts, and then look at our plan and look at our lives and see if there's some better match that we can make to avoid excusing or to lessen our excuses. What can we do to start to change that? And is our excuse, does it make sense? Is it applicable? Is it outdated? Is it someone else's excuse that's rolling around in our head? The more questions we can ask, the more we're going to learn, and the more we start to soften the resolve of the excuse. There's only so much we'll be doing here today. There'll be other material at thestuckcreative.com that you'll need to turn to continue this process of examination and questioning of your excuses. The more time that you can give it, the more you can move it up to front and center and make it along the lines of being having the level of concerns you have about your plan or your goals, the stronger you will be. Now let's turn to a solution to some of our problems with excuses and excusing. A tool that as you do it, it on its own starts to reveal things about excuses, starts to give you insights so that you can take a variety of approaches. Just by working this tool, you get all those benefits naturally over time as you work the tool. It's been well established that writing, keeping a record, helps us to be more aware and much more knowledgeable of something, whatever we might be observing. The act of writing puts a little bit more emphasis, a little bit more energy behind our observations. It also slows us down to look more carefully. And lastly, it makes us articulate, even in simple words, even in a sentence or two, articulate what we've seen. Paying attention to our excuses and excusing, making a few notes consistently, is going to change the whole dynamic with our excuses and with our excusing. I picked the format of a log here for the purpose of I want it simple and short and doable. If I suggested a journal or diary, which could be very helpful in looking at how we work and how we excuse, great, but a lot of us wouldn't be able to get it done. Moving it to being more doable moves it towards being more doable. Again, I'm suggesting short, quick, direct notes. First, you'll need to pick your own logging tools, and they don't have to be anything complex, and I have 2 pointers about that in a moment. And do keep in mind you may want to refine them over time, that the first ones you pick may not be the best. You may want to upgrade them or downgrade them as far as complexity. So be open to persisting to find the right tools, that you won't find the right tools probably the first time out. Pick tools that are easy to use, easily replaceable if you need to do that. They don't have a lot of moving parts. They don't have unnecessary complexity. Keep this simple. Keep it to logging. And on top of that, and you're going to have to trust me on this one, is keep something that's easily accessible. Something that you don't have to run across the house to find, that you may have left in the car, that you have to wait for a charge to kick in, that it's multiple parts and you have 2 out of the 3 parts you need. All of that, if it's too hard to use and if it's not truly accessible, not in your back pocket all the time, your first excuse that you'll be logging is the excuse around not using these tools. They're too complex, so therefore I don't want to use them. Or I don't have all the parts. I couldn't log today because I didn't have everything together. Or my phone wasn't ready. Or the app hadn't been updated. Or I hadn't created an account. Get all that out of the way. Keep it out of the way by keeping things easy and keeping them accessible. And this is what I mean about over time, you may need to downgrade. Go to something much less complex, so it's always going to be there and it's always going to be easy to use. Be open to new ideas how you're going to do this. However you choose to record your notes, it's not going to take a lot of room. You're going to need a date. You're going to need space for your excuse. You're going to need space for your observations of what the experience was like, a little space about when and where it popped up, and just a couple other things. Here's a little secret. The point here is not keeping the log for years or keeping a lengthy record, but it is to sharpen our awareness of excuses and excusing. However long we need to keep the log is however long we need to keep the log. However much we need to write is how much we need to write. If we hit the goal of greatly increasing our awareness of excuses and excusing, and we keep them at bay, and we have more options, more freedom to go forward with our work, then the goal of keeping the log has been satisfied. You'll be keeping your log, and maybe it's a combination of the following three, but you'll be keeping your log at a specific time. Perhaps you'll start your log prospectively ahead of time, writing out what is your plan goal, maybe a few other notes of your expectations if other excuses are coming up. Others tackle this logging retrospectively. They do their work afterwards. They do a debriefing. They go back and put down their goal. They put down what they experienced. They put down the other things that we're going to be talking about here in a moment. The last one is to do it as it rolls out, meaning if you have the right tools and they're totally accessible, probably the best way to do this is as it rolls out. As you're about to begin your work session, what is your plan goal? Then start observing. If you've gotten to that point, maybe your excuse starts hitting you even before you pull out your log or get to the place where you're going to try to do some work. It's recording then. It's capturing the excusing as it happens to you. Before we go on, let me say this clearly. I know excuses are loaded terms. They carry a lot of baggage, plenty of opportunities to beat ourselves up, to focus on how we failed, focused on how we didn't fall through, and the rest. Don't do that. We are looking at things with fresh eyes. Excuses are everywhere. That's not your fault. It's part of life, as I mentioned earlier. We're here to face life, the facts of life, and to do something about them by learning to observe carefully, making a few notes, then contemplating what we've captured. We're not here to beat ourselves up, to look at regret, to recover and relive regret and feelings of failure and the rest. We're here to learn, and through the learning, many ideas will come to you how to improve things and how to lessen the presence of excuses and to move on. We're here to get unstuck, and we're here to move on. We're not here to look backwards. Of course, you need to begin with putting a note of what is your plan goal. Now, you might start off very simply, it is to do such and such, but I'm sure your plan is going to grow more complex as you go into this. And it helps having that complexity. At first, we think no, but it does help having complexity such as, where am I going to be doing this work? When will I be doing this work? Those add to the goals and also add to the possibility of excuses. We might add, how long am I going to work? What am I going to be working with? How am I going to be doing something? And what do I hope to finish up with? Lots of different goals. Start off with a simple one, your general statement of maybe when and where and what. All of your excuses are going to come at you with a variety of I could call languages. Sometimes you're going to hear your excuse in the language of thoughts. Other times your excuse is going to come at you through emotional qualities. And other times it's going to be through your body energy. There's going to be you're feeling up, you're feeling down. You get an answer to your question, am I going to do this or not, through a burst or a lack of energy. And then beyond that is the more amorphous, the abstract sort of gut level messages of maybe intuition. Is this a good time to do this or not? Many forms, they all come at you. Sometimes it's going to be one or two. Sometimes it's going to be all of these. But we need to observe and note so we can recognize excuses when they're around us. Now we're ready to record where our excuses come up. Now, you may think our excuses only come up once, but let me show you that it's a bit more complex than that. Our work session, any work session, is made of multiple points where our friends, the excuses, can come in. An excuse can show up right at the beginning. Am I going to show up for my planned project or my planned time, my planned work session or not? Yes or no. If I made it past the front door and I'm into the work session, if I plan a certain amount, 20 or 30 minutes, am I going to stay the entire time? Anything less than that, there's some sort of excuse at work. If my plan is one thing, but I go below that, then excuses are all around me and they're operating through me. Excuses can enter in also during the work, even if I made it to the door and I put in the full 30 minutes. If I didn't stick with what I was planning on doing, then I've fallen short. The excuses have won out. If I change my plan radically, or even if I change it a little bit so I don't produce as much, or the quality is chipped away, the excuses, at least for the day, have won. Now, I may have avoided all sorts of the previous excuses or overcome them, but if I'm in there for the full time, I've gotten into the work session, I'm there for the full time, I've stuck with what I'm going to do, but if the quality is way below what I was planning or way below what I'm capable of doing, there is an excusing, either overt, either something I've stated in my own mind, or something at work there. There's something that's chipping away, making my work far less, the quality far less, and making myself far less effective than I'm capable of or what I want. Up to this point, we've recorded a lot of the qualities of the excuse. Here, boil it down, see if you can articulate it to a sentence or a short statement. Frequently, we get a statement like, I don't have time tonight, I don't feel like it, I don't have all the materials. We can put it into a statement. Sometimes it's murky, it's not quite as clear, it's more of a feeling tone. Articulate as best as you can and capture the essence of what's the reason or reasons for not going forward. I consider what you just articulated, what you just summarized, is the no reason. I can't go forward with the plan because I'm just too tired, or I can't go forward with the plan because I don't have time. That's the first part of your articulation, but there's something else. There's something else is hidden in that. If we just take a couple seconds more, we can find out what is driving the no of the excuse. Saying, no, I don't want to do the plan, then flip it, add to your questions and say, okay, what would you prefer to do? You don't want to do that. What are you seeking? What are you pulling towards? And if we don't stop with, well, I'm tired, ask the question, what would you really, really like to do then? If you're too tired for that, what is your preference? And we may find that is to read, or it's to call a friend, or it's to, just internet surf, or it's to do all sorts of other things. That's the true desire of ourselves, maybe that time, maybe all the time when we're coming up against trying to develop a new plan and stick to it. Find out, what does the excuse want, rather than just stopping with no, don't go forward with the plan. Find out what's driving it, what it wants, and it may be a indication of how we can change something. I won't say anything more about that. Just ask the question and then see what you discover from it. Sounds like a lot of work. Keeping it short certainly makes it easier, but you won't have to do it long before you start to see if it's going to work for you or not. The excuses won't seem as solid. They won't have as much impact because they're not going to seem as solid, something that grabs us and moves us around. They start to soften up. They get a little bit mushier. They're sort of like, okay, was that an excuse? Or how could that be enough to get me to stop doing this? Because I know this is important. How can this ambiguous, this a little bit of this, a little bit of that, little thinking with a little bit of feeling in there, how is that taking control of me? We start to ask that question, and as soon as we ask that question, then they become even softer, even mushier. They lose some of their solidity, their impact on us. In terms of being a good argument against doing something, they are less convincing. We hear them differently. They're just not as persuasive, not as logical, not as even connected to who we are or what we're feeling or what's in our heart. They're just not convincing, and we start to see their ability to persuade us slowly drift away. Some of our excuses may sound outdated, sort of true, mainly true in the past, but no longer persuasively true now. Through our more careful observations and through our logging, I think we get sort of bored with our excuses. We see in our log, this excuse, well, we had that the night before, and we had that the night before, and it's coming up again tonight, and we saw it last week. And we look at that pattern, and I don't know, maybe boredom is not the best word for it, but it's no longer acceptable to us once we can see it laid out before our eyes in our log. And there'll come a point after hearing these things and being bored with them and being unpersuaded by them and so forth, we sort of say, when the excuse comes up, says, no, don't do that, sort of like, oh hell, I'll just might as well do this. I'll get it off my things to do list, and I won't have to hear this boring thing again, this boring excuse again. We step up. It comes from just working this system, working this technique. The excuses lose their power, and we gain power. We're almost done, and thank you very much for hanging in there, but we're almost done with this tool. All of your logging also can help you, besides revealing new understandings of how you excuse and what excusing is about. It may reveal ways how to avoid excusing, how setting things up in a different way may mean not having to deal with excuses. Wouldn't that be nice? In other words, if my plan is not working, meaning that I'm hitting too many excuses or the excuses are too powerful for me, then I need to change my plan. An example of that would be, my goal is to write every day, and my first time out at this, I say, well, I must be able to write 2 hours per day. But I always am failing at that. So I need to cut back to 1 hour a day. If 1 hour doesn't do it, then 30 minutes. Then if 30 minutes doesn't do it, do 15 minutes. Always being flexible enough to change the plan, to avoid excuses, to avoid strong excuses. That is the key. Look in your log for patterns of success. When have things worked out? When have you been able to persevere, or you've been up against some weak excuses or excuses that have given up over time and that you've gone forward? Is there a change of location, a change of person, a change of time, a change of duration, a change of intensity, a change of tools? Some change or changes that makes it more often that you're going to succeed than you're going to fail with your plans. What is in your log? What clues can you find there? You've done it. We've reached the end of this tool. I know this is longer than what you were imagining when you first started listening, but I think it's going to be worth it. I think you don't have to go back and listen to it again because you got it. You got the principles down. This is simple. It's meant to be simple and quick and naturalistic so that it can take care of itself and you can make discoveries as you roll through it. Above all, though, keep working it, keep logging, keep working on this, because I know you can be more and more successful and keep more and more those excuses away. Thank you for being here today. For more tips, tools, and techniques for getting unstuck and staying unstuck and getting your projects done, please come on over to thestuckcreative.com. This is Gary Goodwin, founder of The Stuck Creative, and I will see you next time.